Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Now, the Witch's Guide, it's not necessarily on hold per se, but as I mentioned before, full casters get a ton of spells, and the Witch also gets different patrons that they can select from that give them other spell options that they can unlock as well as they level up in advance. So they're not on hold so much as just delayed a little bit while I'm doing research and putting all the different slides and pictures together. It's going to take me a little bit of time, so in the meantime, just to kind of space things out a little bit, give myself just a little bit of a break and some breathing room, we are going to be taking another look at alignments. Now, the different character alignments, these are the broad general outlooks that characters may have, how they take a look at the world, deal with situations. They're very, very broad, and they're meant to be so, just to give you, the player, some room on to interpret how they might act, because two cops who are absolutely adherents to the letter of the law, generally good people and nice people, are still going to be fundamentally very different people and act differently, while they may still maintain the broad general scope of the lawful good alignment. That said, though, I wanted to just cover a few things and just try to help new players or even veteran players have a fresh look at this sort of aspect of their characters, and just kind of go over things and provide a few examples on what a lawful good character looks like and how they typically act and behave. So with that said, just to again recap for new players, there are 9 alignments altogether, following 2 different axes on law, neutrality, chaos, and then good, neutrality, and evil. And between these 2 axes, we get the 9 alignments, starting off with lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, then lawful neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral, lawful evil, neutral evil, and chaotic evil. And today we are going to be taking a look at what lawful good looks like. Now, there have been some memes circling around, and they're absolutely great. I love going through them, laughing, finding lame jokes related to D&D, all this fun stuff. But there's one in particular that comes to mind when we're talking about lawful good, and it says lawful good does not mean lawful nice. Technically that's true, but it's also a little bit wrong too. The problem is, and it's always the problem when it comes to alignments, one being so broadly defined or broadly generalized, but then still having some specific interpretations. I think some people mistake the certain contexts for hard and fast rules on things. And the thing is that a lawful good character does not always have to be nice, but the general description of it is that a lawful good person is someone who is honorable and compassionate. They hate to see justice go unpunished. They do their best to serve. They do their best to be a kind and good person. And right there, just with that very general description, it kind of like, lawful good does kind of mean lawful or nice. It does mean that they can be nice and are nice. The trick to it is that they are not always going to be nice, because they're mortal creatures. They're human beings. They're people with failings. A lawful good person can still make some drastic mistakes. And one of my most favorite examples for this is King Arthur. In particular, reading Once and Future King, or any number of interpretations of the Arthurian legends, but specifically I'm thinking of the movie Excalibur. Came out late 70s, I want to say 77. One of my top 10 favorite movies of all time anyways. But the thing is that King Arthur what did his best to be a wise, just, and kind king. Now, he still was a fearsome warrior, especially with Excalibur in hand, and his Knights of the Round Table were some of the best warriors around. But that didn't mean he didn't have his failings. In particular, when he found Lancelot and Guinevere together, he was ready to murder both of them. Instead, he jammed his sword in the ground and essentially, gave up one of the strongest symbols of his kingship over the land, and the land was essentially left without a king and began to fail. The entirety of his kingdom began to fail because of that mystical relationship there and because of his violation of it. Another great example from the same film is when he first met Lancelot and they dueled at a river crossing, and the fighting was fierce. It was terrible. It was actually a really good scene all the way around, even though it's definitely dated a little bit with in comparison to modern fight knowledge and how we understand how these kinds of fights might have gone. I'm getting off track. Point being, they fought, and it was a terrible fight, and Lancelot, as always, was coming out on top, bearing his curse to have never been bested. And in his wrath at losing to this random knight, Arthur called upon Excalibur to help him strike down his foe, and he clove through Lancelot's weapon, smashed through the breastplate, shattering Excalibur and digging the remnants of the blade into Lancelot's flesh. And Merlin starts freaking out, like, "You've broken what could not have been broken." And Arthur just lamented, saying, my pride broke it, my anger broke it. I'm not worthy to wield Excalibur," and he threw it away. That moment was a moment of failure for him, but he regretted it, and that's the important part right there, especially for a lawful good aligned character. They may fail, they may screw up, and they may make mistakes, but because the lawful good person is typically a person of conscience, looking to serve, looking to do good, when they have those failings, they feel guilt about it, remorse, they lament their actions, they try to seek to make up for it and atone. And that atonement rewarded Arthur by seeing the Lady of the Lake restore the sword of Excalibur in the film. And he was able to take it up and continue on. And to top it off, they saved Lancelot, brought him back, and Lancelot joined his cause. It was a moment of growth for Arthur. He failed. He broke an artifact weapon and then got to see it remade because of his profound despair at having proven himself so thoroughly unworthy by having this all too mortal a failing. I mean, I've done martial arts for years. I love fighting, love sparring, love competing, and I love winning. And you get that moment where somebody tags you real good. It just, especially when your dander's up like that, something snaps and you immediately just go all out and go for it. Ideally not killing each other, but the thing is that, once you go all out and then you somebody ends up getting hurt, you feel that moment of remorse. It's like, oh, crap. And this is exactly what we're getting in the ring for, but that's not at all what we necessarily wanted. It's supposed to be a good sport between two people coming into a ring as equals, and that's what that moment was there. So, lawful good does actually mean lawful nice, but it doesn't mean you are perfect in every way, shape, or form. When we start talking about creatures like archons, angels, the different kinds of creatures like that, extraplanar beings who are physical and spiritual manifestations of these very core concepts of law and good. They have no room in their being and their psyche for these little nuances, for these little failings. These are utterly perfect creatures, or at least in theory they're supposed to be. And with all the stories of fallen angels, in particular Asmodeus, Lord of the Nine Hells, there's still some room for interpretation on these things, room for these beings to fail, but generally, typically, they are not going to fail as much or as often as a mortal being does. But when they do, it's going to be profound, and that stain is something that they struggle to cope with because they've never had to deal with that before. They're perfect. Why are they failing? Why are they messing up? And it drives them, to apply a mortal term to essentially an immortal creature, it drives them insane and corrupts their very purpose because it consumes them. Whereas a mortal person has the advantage of being able to just let it go and move on because they're a mortal being. They're going to learn, grow, and adapt. Such high high concept creatures, such beings of pure spiritual essence made up of entirely a good deity's will, doesn't have the ability to do that. So I could probably talk in circles about this. Point being, a lawful good person is typically going to be nice, and a good example is King Arthur. Other great examples, there are really so many, but look to any film where somebody is generally trying to do good and trying to follow the law. Paladins in particular fit this mold really well, but this is an example where a paladin may be less nice because maybe less on the lawful nice spectrum than others. Not in that they are wantonly cruel, but their vows, their moral code, gives them less room than the average person to have these failings. And when they do fail, they do have to atone, similar to King Arthur from the movie Excalibur. They are driven by higher purpose in service to their deity. And I think that's where this idea of lawful good does not mean lawful nice comes from, is this interpretation of a lawful good paladin's code. And in particular, a paladin's vows and their oaths will drive them to do and commit acts that normal people, even normal lawful good people, would not normally do. But some players will take this to mean that they just play them as the opposite of the chaotic stupid archetype. They are the lawful stupid. They are the good idiot. They're just going to charge. There's evil. They're going to charge right in and immediately smite it. That can be acceptable depending on the situation and context. But again, this is a mortal creature. They are not always going to be stupid. I mean, obviously, if you've put in a lower intelligence score, you may want to play that. But even a stupid person will look at a fight where there's, they're outnumbered 20-1 and realize might want to get some backup or try to retreat or hold something a bit smarter than just driving right in. Now, again, depending on the context, if they're trapped and there's no way out, then of course, go down swinging, go down fighting, hold to your oaths, and make the enemy remember you. But lawful good and being a paladin does not mean you have to do the stupid thing. You can be smart, you can be clever, you're just not allowed to break the law. You're not allowed to violate your oaths. You can work within your oaths, but you're not always obligated to do the stupid thing. But that said, having that moment every now and then can be refreshingly hilarious at the table. And again, even a paladin can fail. A paladin can commit a sin or violate their oaths. And trying to stick to lawful good and never ever violate an oath, while admirable, it's also not realistic either. And think of all the great moments that you could end up missing by never ever having your character make a mistake. It's like a paladin has that knee-jerk reaction and makes a grave error in judgment. Not serious enough that they're immediately stripped of their status as paladin, but a black enough mark against their character, against their record, that they have to undertake a quest of penance. They have to make up for their mistake somehow, redeem themselves not only in the eyes of their fellows, their church, but in the eyes of their deity from on high. Such quests, such events can be compelling, emotional moments. I mean, absolutely wonderful moments. And if you want a great example of an incredibly well played paladin, I'd highly recommend you look up Dice Camera Action on the Dungeons and Dragons channel. Anna Prosser plays Evelyn Marthane, paladin in service to the god of light, Lathander. And the performance has just been absolutely remarkable over the last 3 years, and it's gotten better and better as time has gone on, especially with the most recent handful of episodes. It's great. And it demonstrates that, this character is a character. They have failings. They have moments where they do some of the dumbest things possible, not because the player decided to do the goofy, funny choice, but because the player thought, well, what would my character do? Not what would I do. What would my character do? My character is lawful good. That I've played this character to be a trusting character. How would my character react to finding out they've been duped? That they've been lied to? That they've been somehow cheated? And these failings that come about as a result of that, these little character flaws that come out, give the character much more depth, but while still staying within that lawful good alignment. And just as a note here, for all you different DMs, storytellers, MCs, whatever you may be calling yourselves, allow your players to have these moments. Part of the problem with alignments is DMs in particular playing them way too strictly. There are certain contexts where that makes sense. Like, again, a paladin should be trying to hold to a higher moral code, but by not allowing your players to fail or declaring when they do fail, no, that was an evil act. You're no longer lawful good. You've gone down to lawful neutral now, or even neutral good. That just takes everything out of it. Stop being such a dickish little weasel about all of this and let your players be players. Let them have these characters. Let them develop these wonderful character moments within this alignment. God. I've had too many DMs that have done that. But, yeah, like I said, lawful good does not always mean lawful nice, but being lawful good means your character generally will be nice, will abide by the law, will look to serve, and try to punish evil where they can. But that said, every mortal being carries within them the potential for good, for evil, and for absolute apathy. Next time around, we'll be taking a look at the neutral good character alignment. We'll have some other examples of a neutral good character and some ideas on how to play it, run it, and have a closer look at what it means to be neutral good. I hope you've enjoyed today's content. If you did, let me know by throwing a like down there or even dropping in some comments. If you've been liking the content here so far, well, hell, why not consider becoming an honored member down here at the Gamers Den? We're always happy to have more members and alumni joining us on these nights where I manage to get to upload. I hope you all have yourselves a good night. And once again, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Good night, everybody.